Anyway, let's continue.
In the streets, the country's current prime minister has condemned the shooting, calling it an act of brutality. And world leaders have also come out in the last couple of hours expressing their shock as well. Now, a man was detained after the shooting. It happened in the city of Nara in western Japan, where Shinzo Abe was giving his support to a candidate there. Let's get more on this now and go straight to our correspondent, Marika Oy, who's in Singapore. Marika, incredibly shocking, not just because violence is so rare in Japan. It has been for such a long time. It's very difficult to get hold of a gun. But also, Shinzo Abe, we must remind all of our viewers, wherever they are in the world, that he remains a very powerful man in Japan. He was a hugely influential figure, wasn't he?
Indeed, he comes from a political family, and he was Japan's longest serving prime minister, only stepped down in 2020. But as you said, he still has huge influence over the current administration. So, for example, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Mr. Abe came out and said that Japan needed to increase military spending. And then shortly after, you start hearing from the current Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, echoing the sentiment. So you can see how still very influential he is. And it came as a huge shock when we first heard the news that he was shot at around 11:30 a.m. local time this morning in Japan, as you said, in the city of Nara. Of course, Japan has an upper house election coming up this Sunday, and that's why he was out on the streets, giving a speech supporting one of the candidates in the city. Apparently, that visit was only confirmed late last night. So how the suspect managed to find out about it and prepared his attack, that remains to be seen. But as you say, a suspect, a 41-year-old man who lives in the city of Nara, has been in police custody.
The bus raw, in the words of Felix Biederman, he wanted the Japanese, the bus raw. He was like, there's a big crisis happening with our population. God forbid we open our borders to immigration. That's not happening. But we will definitely try to get you guys the bus raw.
That world leaders around the world very quick to come out and express their shock as well. He wasn't just a popular leader in Japan. He was a popular leader on the international stage.
Yes, I mean, a couple of decades ago, Japan was known for a revolving door of prime ministers. Then Shinzo Abe, for the second.
Oh yeah, I'll just explain one thing though. Like, other than obviously our incredible relationship with Japan that was carefully manufactured and designed over the course of the Cold War as an anti-capitalist force against China and Russia, USSR at the time, Japan really did get away with like a lot of fucking war crimes that people just don't talk about. Like, everybody always talks about the Nazis, and for some weird reason, outside of Korea and China and the Philippines, but not as much anymore because Philippines is also an island forward operating base for America, like, people truly don't talk about the horrific war crimes that Shinzo Abe's grandfather engaged in personally, that were of course pardoned by the American government and also whitewashed by the American government. So there's a lot of that is but that's also part of the reason why he can do stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like, the reason why he can do shit like this, a Japanese prime minister in a plane with 731 on it is equal to German chancellor driving around a tank with 1488 all over it, by the way. Like, the reason why he can get away with shit like this is because, like, people just don't. R.I.P. and peace, Shinzo Abe. You may have chosen some weird hills to die on throughout your life, but at least you're dead. Did I say anti-capitalist instead of anti-communist? Sorry, I meant anti-communist, expressly anti-communist. And we'll look at like what the Japanese socialists and what they have an opinion on. But basically, we'll get to 731, okay? We'll get to 731 and its symbolism in a second, okay? That's not an accident. Like, him being on a plane that has 731 on the side of it is not an accident. But we're going to get to that. Let's just talk about his assassination first. Don't Google Unit 731. Worst mistake of my life. Don't Google Shinzo Abe grandfather. Worst mistake of my life. If you're a fan of Shinzo, if you're a fan of Abe senpai, you're not gonna like what you see in those Google results.
Second time that he became a prime minister, he served for many years, and as a result, he became kind of the face of Japanese politics. Became very close friends with, for example, Vladimir Putin. He had very close ties with him, and since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Mr. Abe has come under a bit of criticism about that. He's also known for his very nationalistic views, so he had very frosty relationships with Japan's neighbors like China and South Korea when he was the prime minister. So he was a divisive figure. While his economic policy has been cheered by a lot of investors, his foreign policy has been quite controversial. And as a result, some of the relationships that Japan has with its neighbors were somewhat strained as well.
Yeah, our colleagues at BBC Monitoring, that they've noticed that in China, leaders there have expressed their shock and they're paying tribute to Shinzo Abe. But online, they're noticing that a lot of Chinese nationalists are celebrating his death, showing just how divisive he was there, and that he didn't have friends everywhere. How do you think he would like to be remembered? You've been reporting on his career for some time now.
The funniest thing is like Americans being like, but he was a liberal. He was a liberal. And it's like, hey, why do you think people say cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds, brother? Like, yeah, liberals are like that. Okay. Like, sometimes. All the time. Anyway.
Well, he was a politician who pushed for that constitution. Of course, Japan has that pacifist constitution since the end of the Second World War. He wanted that to be changed, and he's been pushing for that since he was in office. And even after he stepped down, he has been quite vocal about Japan's military spending, how Japan needs to cooperate more and, work with its allies when it comes to, for example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And of course, the current government of Fumio Kishida has been quite proactive in working together with the United States and some of its other Western allies to put pressure on Russia, which didn't happen in 2014. So, as I said, he was a very influential figure, and even though he might not have been the most popular politicians in Japan, especially among those on the left, this attack comes as a huge shock, and we're now seeing a lot of pictures of him as a young child, because of course his grandfather was a prime minister, his father was a senior politician in the.
That's kind of weird. His grandfather? Wait, what? That's interesting. How does the timing work on that? Like, come on, dude, you're the fucking BBC. Literally, think. What would the timing of that be like? I mean, Shinzo Abe's kind of old. I wonder how old his grandfather was. What time period was he in power, you think? When would that have happened? Like, you're not going to mention that? You're not going to mention that? There is no world in which a motherfucking German chancellor who is coming from a long lineage of fucking, German politicians would never be mentioned like that. Okay? This is what I'm talking about. Japan was able to just totally evade a lot of this stuff. And I love Japanese people. I love Japanese culture. I'm obsessed with Japan. Yes, all of those things are correct. But come the fuck on, dude. I mean, Jesus Christ. The Japanese were canonically frozen in ice between 1938 and 1946. Why are you spreading lies? Yeah, they're making it seem like he was a part of the fucking Minions, dude. You disgust me, you weeb, says Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Okay, I'm not a weeb, but like I am a big fan of high-speed rail. Okay. But come the fuck on, dude. I mean, Jesus Christ. Otaku's avenged China as a special treat. Genshin Impact is giving away 800 Primo and an Abe corpse doll to equip your favorite lolly or handsy man. Okay, stop. My man says, so Shinzo was a Nazi? Bro, is that the only way you can analyze like whether someone is good or bad? there's something fundamentally broken about like the way that Americans look at history, where it's like, it's only if you're a Nazi. For all intents and purposes, yes. Okay. For you to comprehend, yes. One of his okay, we'll talk you're standing at high speed rails allegedly why you don't get along with train wrecks, so I've heard. Oh, it's not only Shinzo Abe's like personal background or is his family lineage or whatever, okay, and the war crimes that his grandfather engaged in, okay? What is significant about this, what is significant about it is that what he did in a position of power. And like ultimately, like I said, I guess maybe because of my love for high speed rail, I do, and because of how far removed I am from Japan, that I have the capacity to look at this without I don't know, I have the capacity to look at this in like a in like a less passionate way. So that's the reason why I'm saying like one way or the other, I'm not like a huge, I'm not like, oh my God, thank God he died, but I just don't care. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like he's a fucking politician in a position of power. He's a liberal politician. Of course he's gonna be fucking dog shit, right? Um but yeah, Shinzo Abe, former Japanese prime minister, was assassinated, a powerful figure among Japan's right wing. Abe was an apologist for Imperial Japan's war crimes and supported U.S. imperialist efforts in the Asia Pacific. This is true. He comes from a long line of like, America adjacent, as far as I understand. Like he comes from a political family, and the Liberal Democratic Party, which was one originally, some of which were um, some of which were fascist, and then also like hyper nationalist and expressly and openly very anti communist. The short and sweet of it is basically that the CIA had a lot of involvement in the 60s and 50s in Japan during the Cold War, and they hyped up. They basically did what they've done everywhere around the world, and they wanted to make sure that they had a prominence and a strong position in Japan. A disturbing majority of Japanese don't believe that many of Japan's war crimes occurred, my family among them. The historical revisionism is taught in almost all the schools and is due to part by the imperialist org Nippon Kaigi, which Abe is a part of. Except also, I mean, that same shit is in Turkey too, so I get it. You know,